what I'd like to do is start off, Saul, with just a short segment of National Geographic documentary that features the work we've done in collaboration with the Dominican Republic Ministry of Culture at La Isabela. So let me see if I can share my content.
The year 1494. Christopher Columbus, the most famous explorer of his age, returns to the New World. This time, he comes with a new mission: to build a colony and sow vast riches. Yet within 4 years, the city Columbus created would disappear. His ships and his men buried in long forgotten graves. Now, 2 teams of archaeologists are trying to find evidence that explains the colony's demise.
All these people died, passed away for some reason.
His story is in the water. His time capsule's in the water. His ship is in the water. That's what we're looking for.
On land and at sea, a 500-year-old cold case is being reopened to uncover the true story of Columbus's cursed colony.
So we have provided that, Saul. So there are copies available electronic if you would like to have anyone watch the hour documentary. So again, I want to thank for the invitation to speak today and acknowledge that Indiana University, the Center for Underwater Science, and the IU Gateway, Mexico Gateway, we're pleased to be able to participate. And also I note that we have colleagues from Dominican Republic, our Ministry of Culture, which hopefully at the end they can say a few words about the research and endeavors we have. When we talk about Columbus, Christopher Columbus, there's lots of issues today. We know that Columbus himself died in 1512 and his body was interned back in Santo Domingo, now in the Faro Colón. But many people today talk about the atrocities, Las Casas, the destruction of the Indies, the Taino that encountered these first Europeans and all of the issues. I don't want to get into that controversy, but in my opinion, I'd like to think of Columbus as an explorer. This is a person that managed to do 4 voyages of exploration into the Caribbean, into the New World, over a 12-year period, which to me is absolutely phenomenal, and really what we should think about Columbus as a navigator, as an explorer, but not necessarily as a colonist. When we speak of the history of Hispaniola, I like to talk about it as the cradle of the Americas for the first contact. When we think of Hispaniola, first comes to mind with the European contact is the loss of the Santa Maria in present-day Haiti, Cape Haitian, 1492. On Christmas Eve, we lost the first vessel of European origin at that time. On Columbus's second voyage, he established La Isabela, late 1493, basically 1494, settled the area of La Isabela, and then the following summer, the first hurricane, 1495, June. A minimum of 6 ships, maybe as many as 9 ships. Most notable would be the Maria Galante, the flagship of Columbus's second voyage. And this is the first time Europeans had encountered a hurricane. Huracan being a Taino word, So 1496, we have documents here at our Lilly Library at Indiana University, a letter stating that in 1496, Isabela was to be abandoned and no more ships were to go there. 1496, the start of the establishment of Santo Domingo. But another major hurricane in 1502 not only destroyed the settlement at Santo Domingo, but also it destroyed a series of 22 ships that were sailing back to Spain as they crossed eastern Dominican Republic and tried to cross the Mona Passage. Where those ships are, we still don't know today. We may have evidence of one, as I'll show. It's important, though, for us also to think about the indigenous people, the Taino. Irving Rouse in 1950s coined the phrase, the Taino, the people that greeted Columbus. We know that Columbus did not discover the New World. There were large populations in the Caribbean, and of course in Mexico, Central America. Las Casas estimates as many as 3.5 million in the Caribbean, Hispaniola. That may be a high number, but certainly there were large populations, and Las Casas writes that they were decimated within the first 10 years, down to several thousand. Like in Yucatan, we have not cenotes, we call them manantials, deep water wells, and some of my research in Dominican Republic has been working on a very important site, Manantial de la Aleta. This site, you notice the concept that is very similar to what you have for your cenotes, where the indigenous people believed in the heavens above, the underwater world below, and then the earth's surface, which they lived upon. And this diagram of the Aleta shows how the site was utilized, as we proved, for ritual offerings, ceremonial offerings. No evidence of sacrificial, but certainly lots of evidence of offerings of personal effects and religious objects. Without going into great detail, certainly there's lots of intact ceramics. Many of the ceramics also were preserved with their food sources still inside. The Aleta being between, well, as deep as 73 meters in depth. It's low oxygen, virtually no light, so the state of preservation is excellent. Lots of organic materials, ceremonial duhos, cahoba vessels, Makana war clubs. As far as we know, the only Makana war club that's survived was from La Aleta. Without going into more detail, there are numerous publications. This is from the Journal of Caribbean Archaeology. We have a couple of peer-reviewed articles there. There are other publications, and we're very interested in continuing our Taino, our work on the indigenous peoples. One of the land caves nearby, the Aleta, is Jose Maria Cave. And it has this drawing, pictograph on the wall, that we feel as interpreted as maybe a description of the first treaty in the New World between the Spanish and the Taino, where after the hurricane, the Spaniards were dying of starvation. They made a treaty to get the cassava bread or the guayga bread, and that was loaded onto ships from Siona Island area and brought back to Santo Domingo area. And we think this is a drawing of a ship, maybe one of the caravels or a ship coming straight at you with a cut water, maybe hawse holes and the sails. So this is a possibility of a description of the first contact and the first treaty between the indigenous Taino and the Spanish that were colonizing the island of Hispaniola in the Caribbean in North America. We don't really know what these ships of discovery, now I'm really talking here the early ships, the early caravels, what they look like. There are no plans. This is the most widely accepted 15th century model from Matero, the Church of Matero. This has been well studied and documented, and it is perhaps our best type of description of these early ships of discovery, which would have been utilized on these first voyages of Columbus before the colonization. Note some of the key features: the bulbous bottom, forecastle, stern castle, crow's nest. What's also interesting is the documentation in the model of the deck beams protruding through the hull of the ship, which is an early style. Again, we have no plans. We have no ships of discovery of Columbus era that have yet been discovered. So we really don't know exactly how they were built. There's been lots of illustrations, such as this one, 1892, from the Columbus Exposition in Chicago, 1893, but this isn't anywhere close to realistic. The anchor, this is not a Columbus era anchor, it's artistic from 19th century. The gun ports, we know that they had bombardettas, versos, but they did not have gun ports of any type that we know of. 1930s, other illustrations. I could spend an hour showing pictures of replica ships, of models, but the point is we don't have a ship of Columbus that we can really look at in these ships of discovery, which is part of our mission to find. We do have features. Typical large anchors. These two anchors are in Caballo Blanco Reef, Dominican Republic. These anchors were probably offloaded together as a ship ran aground. It's possible from the 1502 hurricane, we're not sure, but it's classic early style anchors from a morphological opinion and viewing. We also have nearby bombards and breech blocks. Standard bombard, bombardetta. We know that the Columbus ships had bombards. The Santa Maria had a minimum of 2, maybe more. Typically, they were down in the hold of the ships as described, not in placement for firing. But this is one that's been brought back to the Oficina Nacional Patrimonio Cultural Subaquática in Santo Domingo. And this is one that still needs to be conserved. There are also versos. This may not look like much if you're not a diver or archaeologist, but these are 2 important swivel guns, versos, that are from the same site as the anchors. Some of these have been recovered. We have conserved one. Here is one that we are looking at with Dr. Guerrero and our faculty, Tori Galloway and myself. This is in the vats in Santo Domingo at the Conservation Laboratory. Again, I don't want to bore you with the details, but we have published, instead of just a morphological view of the description of anchors, artillery, knowing that the early Columbus era would have had versos and bombardettas in anchors of a certain style, we've also done metallurgy. And I would encourage you to get a copy of our published paper on the metallurgy of Columbus era artillery. It's very preliminary. We need a much larger database, but we're attempting to add science to the investigation. So a little digression. I was sent this image and had conversations with a treasure hunter, Barry Clifford, and we had communicated. I had not met the man for several years. We communicated, and he sent me this picture. I see what appears to me and what appeared to him as a tube gun or a bombardetta. And after several serious conversations, I agreed to go to Haiti and look at what he thought might be the Santa Maria. And this being then a bombard, a Columbus era, and it may be the Santa Maria. As would be expected if you look at the Santa Maria, a grounding at night, gently run onto a sandbar or a reef, shallow waters. It's a large pile of quarried ballast. This ballast pile was nondescript. I spent 3 different part days diving here, but with no permission for excavation, so just visual survey. And I have to say, my conclusion is
Sorry, you are silenced.
yeah, I just saw that I was muted. Okay, sorry. How long has that happened?
Not long, like 5 words.
It's okay.
Okay. Well, that's not many words for me, so I'll continue. So the site, we did some documentation. Again, I don't know if it is the Santa Maria. We put proposals in to go back. I'll show you a little segment of a newscast that talks about it, and then I'll continue here.
Scientists are leading a team to learn more about what could be one of the most significant discoveries ever. A noted maritime archaeologist believes he has found Columbus's sunken Santa Maria. RTV6 reporter Tanya Spencer talked with the IU team that will be leading the investigation.
Under the waters just off the coast of Haiti, the potential discovery of a lifetime.
When you hear the evidence of what we found, I think the evidence is overwhelming that this ship, most probably is the Santa Maria.
Noted maritime archaeologist Barry Clifford believes these are remnants of Christopher Columbus's ship. He called in Indiana University underwater scientists to lead the investigation to prove or disprove the find.
I think it's a little premature to announce this as being the Santa Maria. There's no question. But is it potentially a Santa Maria? Absolutely.
IU professor Charles Beeker has already spent hours at the site and can't wait to get back to get a closer look. He and Matt Mouse will lead the investigation.
If it still warrants a 15th century shipwreck that might still be proven to be the Santa Maria, we'll bring in other scholars and interest people. This should be much broader than IU, but IU will be in charge.
Although still early, both agree this find could be one for the history books.
Archaeologically, it's quite rare to be able to associate a specific name with a ship, but there really aren't very many vessels from this time period in the New World. And the location of the vessel, this particular shipwreck, very near to La Navidad, where we have corresponding archaeological and historical data indicating the location of that fort established by Columbus in 1492 after the Santa Maria ran aground. Their close location to each other really is a strong piece of data supporting this site as a potential Santa Maria.
Tanya Spencer,
So again, I want to emphasize that Indiana University is not saying, I am not saying it is the Santa Maria, but I will tell you that it warrants additional work. We could spend another hour discussing UNESCO's view of the site, our proposal to go back to the site. I, again, would steer you to some of our published material on that. It does warrant going back and looking at the site, though. Isabela. Certainly, Isabela is a site of, again, 6 to 9 shipwrecks, 6 minimum, from the June 1495 hurricane. Established late 1493, utilized 1494 to 1496. Indiana University has conducted not only underwater survey, but my colleagues have looked at 11 Taino sites in the area. So this area was populated prior to Columbus's arrival, and certainly with his arrival, there was also Taino in the area. The classic January 1992 National Geographic illustration. There's an article, Kathy Deegan's work, Jose Cruzant, which does a stylistic view of the settlement. Noted is the house, the Casa Colon, with its fortified wall around it. The large warehouse, anticipating this would be a settlement site the first church in the Americas, where Mass was held in 1494, the first Mass in the Americas. But this area has some issues. Frederick Ober, 1892, had this drawing of the site, the Pleistocene Cliff area, again, the Columbus House, the warehouse, some interpretive trails that are around La Isabela. In 2007, UNESCO, their technical assistance mission, came to Isabela, Indiana University. Myself and another professor, Conrad, participated, along with all the ministries involved with La Isabela. And the technical report, what I brought out, and I hoped everyone did, was first and foremost, they indicated that they needed to speak with only one voice. Again, you had monumentos, you had medio ambiente, cultura, turismo, different people with different ideas about the nomination of the area, the enhancement as a World Heritage Site designation by UNESCO. In the report, Indiana University was charged with cataloging of stored archaeological material. Also, they indicated in conservation the major concern of the stabilization of the Admiral's house, the Casa Colón. Additionally, Indiana University, along with the agencies of Dominican Republic, they asked to have rules of cooperative agreements for conservation of materials and dissemination of our research results. We've conducted now 3 different inventories of the artifacts that were brought up primarily by Kathy Deegan, University of Florida, Jose Cruzon, Venezuelan archaeologist on site for many years. Unfortunately, these objects were not well conserved. They're not in a climate controlled area. There's been issues of attrition of certain objects, but at least the attempt was to catalog and to document these objects in hopes that in the future, Isabela will be revived as a World Heritage Site, and these objects will be invaluable from the land excavations that were conducted at La Isabela right up through till just after the 1992 500-year anniversary. Cruzon's 1991 illustration of the House of Colón. You can see part of it is now has fallen into a sea, as much of a third of it. Also, the aerial photograph from National Geographic, the House of Colón, the deterioration of the rock face of the Pleistocene cliff. The buildings themselves were built out of local limestone. Initially, the House of Colón, the Admiral's house, and the nearby quarry still shows evidence of the saw marks on the limestones and the cut faces where these blocks were cut out to do the initial construction of La Isabela. The Dominican Republic has attempted to shore up the House of Colón to protect it from further deterioration, but it's obvious that the walls, the rocks, the cut blocks, many are missing, and the fall off into the sea is a major concern of UNESCO and Dominican Republic, is how to best protect this area so that another 500 years from now, the Columbus House still will exist without just eroding into the sea. Our survey work included drone survey and documentation of the cliff zones themselves. I thought this might best illustrate the severity of the amount of rocks that have deteriorated along this Pleistocene cliff on the House of Colón. So our survey work in 2019, prior to the pandemic, in summer, and then again in December, we had teams from the university and colleagues from Mexico, INA, California State Parks participate on a visual survey, and also for the drone survey and some electronic survey. And what was recommended was that this area have riprap or large rubble rock be placed, something that was somewhat in suiting for the structures themselves. The rock could be placed out in front of the House of Cologne in order to make a breakwater and help protect the cliff from further deterioration. Again, without going into detail, we do have a technical report that was presented to the Medio Ambiente, Cultura, Turismo of the recommendations by Indiana University and our colleagues from California State Parks about what might be done and how this might be protected by using of this riprap. But really, I want to finish up with our work that I really want to direct, and that's the in-water work. La Isabela Bay has, again, 6 shipwrecks, including the Maria Galante, the flagship of Columbus. We have conducted 3 magnetometer surveys in Isabela. Most recently, our work was the National Geographic documentary, the segment I just showed you. To date, the only feature we have discovered is an anchor. This anchor we recovered at the request of the Ministry of Culture, and it's now in the Underwater Cultural Patrimony Laboratory in Santo Domingo, where it's gone through conservation. I'm not saying this is a Columbus anchor, but I will say it's from Columbus Bay, where we know there are ships that sunk during the hurricane of 1495. Most importantly, our magnetic surveys, we have 31 magnetic anomalies. So each one of these red dots represents material under the mud, the silt, maybe buried as much as 3 to 4 meters of depth. So we electronically can see them with the magnetometer, but we have yet to be able to prove an anomaly as to what it might be. But we think these represent the potential of the 6 ships of Columbus, or features of those ships that were sunk in that hurricane of June 1495. In the Dominican Republic, I also think our contributions are developing a national system of living museums. These are special marine protected areas. Our most recent is the opening of the Parque Nacional La Caleta on the Begonia, 1725 ship. We've also have the Captain Kidd Living Museum and 2 others in that region, the Coliseum, but we want to continue our work on the north coast of La Isabela area, looking for the ships of Columbus for academics, not really for diving. It's a kind of a murky area, but the importance of these ships cannot be overstated if discovered. So then I'd like to thank my colleagues. Here is one of our teams, and we see Dr. Guerrero here, and Josue. Pedro Morales is our representative in the government, along with Francis Soto. So these are some of the colleagues in our field group that participated in 2019, our most recent survey. With that, I'd like to thank the Universidad Autónoma de Yucatán and kind of show your model, and appreciate the opportunity to present, and I will open it up for any conversation.
Thank you, Charlie. Bueno, ahora pasaremos a si alguien tiene alguna pregunta. Y quizás lo ideal sería preguntar directamente al doctor en inglés para facilitar un poco la comunicación. No sé si alguien tenga alguna pregunta.
Perhaps, Saul, I believe Pedro Morales, are you attending today? I think I saw you here.
Yep.
Hello. Give us a few words in Spanish of your interest in the work we're trying to do.
Hola. Saludos. Yo soy Pedro Morales, el director de Patrimonio Cultural Subacuático. Y solamente quiero darle las gracias a ustedes por la oportunidad y agradecer al profesor Beeker por su trabajo durante alrededor de 20 años, 20 años o más o menos que tiene haciendo una labor encomiable junto a su equipo, a Claudia, a Matt, a Tori y al grupo de la Universidad de Indiana Yo lo que espero es que podamos continuar con su labor aquí pronto, porque hubiese sido muy difícil llegar a donde hemos llegado sin el trabajo que la Universidad de Indiana y sus investigadores, con Charlie a la cabeza, han logrado. Una vez más, le doy las gracias a cada uno de ustedes. Y gracias por la oportunidad.